Hello, Marriage Support Group. We have Shiloh Minor here, and we are going to be discussing how to leave 2024 behind and how to move forward and get off that hamster wheel. Welcome, Shiloh.
Hey, thanks you.
So let's talk about what we can do right now and how to move forward.
Okay, great. So, as you said, I'm Shiloh Minor, and I help women who want to heal their marriages do so, even if their husband is not on board. He doesn't want to go to couples therapy or read books or join the group. He's like, no, we're fine. And you're like, we're not fine. And one of the things I've noticed is that the Christmas season brings out the worst in like so much of us, and it's not your fault. It's not like, oh, if we can't even enjoy the holidays, who are we? No, even like great couples are having friction on the holidays because it's a change of routines, all kinds of different expectations. And also the darkness in the winter, I think, has a massive impact. So the first
Mm,
thing is to not judge your whole relationship by how the month of December felt. That's your
yeah,
first rule. Be like, it's hard for everyone. We're not going to tell ourselves a story about now it's never going to work. Now we're doomed. And start off 2025 with this really depressed and hopeless outlook.
I think every year we go through that little bit of a blues time for me. My kids are adults, so
Mhm.
I have two that leave the home after Christmas. They're only here for about 3 or 4 nights. So my 3 or 4 or 5 nights are just packed full of cooking and prepping and it's just like all this craziness. And then all of a sudden they leave and I feel sad and I'm dealing with all these emotions. And you're right, like I'm going to be looking at like the entire time that we're together, I'm looking at my husband like, you need to help me here, you need to do you need to help me prep the vegetables or whatever it is. I'm constantly looking for help so that I can enjoy the moment, but I'm so busy trying to make the moment perfect. And then I'm my default is to look at my husband to help me make things perfect. But we're different personalities, so we have all this going on, and all of a sudden we're here, and you're looking back and there's this big, I don't know, almost, I feel almost like it's like the blues, but it's also a little bit of regret. I have a little bit of regret in the sense of looking back sometimes and saying I could have been more in the moment, or I could have just
There's
been a little
disappointment. There's
disappointment.
disappointment.
Yeah, what
There
could I
went
have
the
done better?
holidays.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, like I have little kids, and so it's like, oh, are you excited? Are you prepared? And I'm always like, Christmas is so hard because I have
Mm,
two little boys stuck in the house in the winter.
yeah.
Like, it's just not an ideal scenario. I can't find them friends to go to as easily because you got to drive in the snow and all those things. And so I'm saying that out loud because I know that we feel guilty for not being gleeful. Like,
Mm.
oh, I should be super excited to be with my family. But instead, you're like, oh, either, you got big kids and they're leaving, or you got little kids and you're like, how am I going to keep my head on straight? And so, this is the other piece of advice is that just like put your oxygen mask on. Like, you're going to hear this over and over and over and over. But the Christmas is when we go, oh, it's the holidays. I can't take a break to go for a walk. I can't maintain my normal workout team routine. That's not fair because grandma's in town, blah, 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 blah. But that's not true. That's another story you're telling yourself that at this time of year, I actually have to come last or I'm a real bad woman. This is
Mm-hmm.
not good. But what really happens is because, like you said, we want to be perfect for everyone else, we put ourselves last and we become very stressed, very resentful, and that wrecks it for you. Like, even forget about
That's right.
everybody else. That wrecks it for you. You don't get to have any fun. You don't get to appreciate, the moment. And so, in any small way, even if it's not your normal routine, like be like, hey, husband, I'm leaving the house for 15 minutes. I'm going for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Or like take the kids out where there's other families and they can go sled as long as humanly possible. Do things to give yourselves that reprieve because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a pressure cooker.
I think that also before you do that, you have to acknowledge exactly what we were talking about. What is that story in your head? What are you telling yourself? For me, it's perfection. The more
Mm-hmm.
perfect my Christmas is, the more enjoyable it will be for my kids. But then
Mm-hmm.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm freaking out. I'm not enjoying my time with them. But I have to be conscious about the fact that that's what I'm trying to do and that's what I'm focusing on. And so, exactly what Shiloh said, like if you can be consciously aware of what the story is, what you're thinking, what your expectations are of yourself and others, then you can almost like, is that really an expectation? Is this really going to happen? Just acknowledging that. And then, yeah, step away, go
Mm-hmm.
for a walk, step away, go take a bath, like step away from the situation and realize, what do you really want to accomplish here? You really want to have an enjoyable time with your family,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and saying that now, it's like when you're looking back at that, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't beat yourself up about that it wasn't great or that you were hypersensitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've cried on Christmas. I've cried. I've cried. Cried.
Yeah.
And so, and like days later, I'm like, why did I cry? Why did I let myself get so emotional? So
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, I want that to be something conscious that I'm thinking about now, not beat myself up for how I was during the holidays, and
Mm-hmm.
then take that into the next event into the summer, whether it be,
Yeah.
Easter, Mother's Day, or whatever it is. Now I'm more
Mm-hmm.
conscious of it.
That's right. And so you're looking back and you're like, maybe regrets, maybe disappointments. And the danger is that we tell a hopeless story about ourselves or our husband or our whole relationship. So it's either,
Mm,
I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle it. I don't have it in me. Maybe I'm not good enough. I don't know, but I can't handle it. That was overwhelming. I don't want to ever do that again. So then you start kind of planning your exit because you're like, that never again. Right. And
yeah.
then you look at your partner or your husband and you're like, this person did not bail me out. I was at the end of my rope. I needed help. And he was over there, oblivious and not holding space for me. Now, remember, it's stressful for him. Even if
Mm-hmm.
he's not carrying the same type of mental load as you, the whole season ratchets everybody up a bit. And then you say, well, maybe we're not a good match because I want this and he wants that. And it's probably not possible, probably incompatible. But those
Mm-hmm.
are just stories based on painful emotions in the past. And so when you go into the rest of the year, like Dolly said, it's just get aware of the conclusions you're taking from yuck feelings. Like, yeah, you had some yuck feelings. They weren't nice. But that story, there's an infinite number of stories that could be applicable to your relationship. And if you choose the one that says, I can't handle this, he's not good enough, will never work, you will create that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that today we're not talking about resentment, but when you do carry those thoughts, when you've let the story spiral, right? So it went from, I failed at Christmas, or I was too hypersensitive, or it wasn't perfect, and then it goes to, well, he didn't help me, or he didn't do this, or he wasn't there for me, and then to going like, he doesn't love me. You're letting these thoughts spiral. So it's very important to be conscious of your like those original, like where it originated from, because yeah, all of a sudden you're thinking, we're miserable. We've never loved each other. And that's not at all the story. It started with this one. And because that became your focus, it went further and further and further and further. Yeah, like it really does come to that original story. And so let's say you're down that path and you're here now. You're at that space where all you can see is that your marriage is destroyed. And you don't even know where the original story came from. What is something that maybe someone can do for that, Shiloh?
This is such a great question because so many of my clients come to me in that space and they use phrases like maybe too much damage is done.
Mm,
Right? Like there's only
yep.
so much damage that you can take and there's no repairing it. And that's actually never true. And we know that's never true because people who have experienced damage that you can't comprehend, like every kind of marital damage, some of them decided they wanted to heal and start again and did it. And people
Yeah.
who have experienced what you might consider small potatoes gave up because
Mm-hmm.
it's actually only based on what you desire. So what I always say to my clients when they're like, or potential clients are trying to decide, should I work on this? Is too much damage done? Like, am I just fighting a losing battle here? As I
Mm-hmm.
just say, well, what do you want? What do you want to happen? Do you want to let it go? Or do you want to have the relationship you desire?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of go like, well, I want it, but can I? Is that possible? And I'm like, well, yes. Like, if that's what you want, you can create it. And that's what you have to hold on to is not like people get caught up in like destiny and meant to be and too much damage done and all these narratives that are totally out of your control really have nothing to do with you. They're totally
Mm-hmm.
abstract, made up concepts that have you lost all your power. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to us? I don't know. I'm just floating in the breeze to like, well, what do I want? And if I really want to have this beautiful marriage that I believe is possible, then you can do that. You can get support. You can find somebody who's going to teach you how to take those steps.
That's right. And you can't do it if you're carrying all of those stories and all of that resentment in from 2024. If you are stuck in those stories, if you're stuck in that, in that spiral at the bottom here where everything is your spouse's fault, it's impossible to move forward. It really is. Now you're just living to exist. You're just existing and there's no growth there. You have to find a way to deal with this. Either process it, move through it, resolve it, forgive it, whatever these steps are, but that has to be left in the past in order to move forward. Go ahead.
I love what you said about how you can't build it if you carry all that stuff from 2024. And the way I think of it is that like your heart needs to be open to receive love, right? You need to be open, it needs to be available. If it's packed to the top with garbage of like, oh, this person, he did this, he did this, he did this. And men will say to me, she told me about something I did 10 years ago, like it was yesterday. And I say, that's because when we retell ourselves the story year after year, it's worse than if it happened yesterday. It's as if it happened thousands of times since the original event. So we're really re-traumatizing ourselves and causing ourselves so much suffering by not accessing tools to release resentment. But also what happens is if your husband is trying to love you, if he is doing sweet things for you, it doesn't even feel good. You can't even enjoy that, or because your heart is blocked from receiving what goodness that is there. So
That's right.
again, if you want to feel loved, then taking the power in your own hands and saying, what can I do to actually feel loved in this relationship? How can I let go of the things in the way is so empowering because you can experience all of that without him like saying the right things and acknowledging exactly how I went wrong and digging all into the past. That's not worth it most of the time.
And I just want to also be clear, like Shiloh and I are not saying that you don't have a right to that pain or that resentment. And we're not saying that they were there for you when they weren't. What we're saying is that maybe that was true and maybe there's truth to it. Maybe there's part of that story, but how is it going to serve you to move forward? If you are in this group and you are looking to maybe reconcile or, get stronger in your relationship, those, that history is not going to serve you to move forward. And it's going to draw that power away from you. And so you have every right to your feelings. You have every right to think those thoughts, but let's let 24 go in the past or deal with it or discuss it so that you can move forward.
I love what you said about how it's not wrong to have those feelings because a large part of the healing process is you feeling those feelings and validating them yourself and allowing yourself to say, yeah, I was disappointed, I was sad, that really hurt. And anybody who works with you is going to do that with you too,
That's
because
right.
that's really painful what you went through. And what you're saying, I think another one of the stories that stops us is we say, well, that's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fair that I'm going to be the one to process the feelings because they did hurt me and I am hurt. And I will agree with you. It's not fair most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships are not fair. The world's not fair. We say this to our kids all the time, but there's still a part of us that just resists the unfairness of stuff and
Yeah.
doesn't want to go there. But once we
Mm-hmm.
let go of that narrative about who needs to do the work to make it fair, you can make progress so much more quickly.
So powerful. Shiloh has a really great giveaway. It's called the 5 Ways You Could Unknowingly Sabotage Your Relationship. I downloaded it. I read through it. Shiloh is really well written. I appreciate that you're offering this up. If you want it, there will be a link below to sign up and grab that from Shiloh. You can also find Shiloh in the directory. If you want to talk to her, she offers a discovery call where you can, just get to know her and see if you're a good fit to work with her. And I can't recommend, Shiloh and our experts strongly enough. So thank you so much, Shiloh. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say that don't waste your life stuck in the past
Mm.
because it is not worth it. There's so much available to you right now in this moment if you choose to take that step, and I encourage you to do so.
Can I add something with that? For years, like when my marriage was really struggling, it all started with something that my husband did that I resented. and I felt like he didn't have my back. And I felt every, I felt like my vision of him, my view of him shifted, and I couldn't get it back. And for the next 6 to 8 years, we struggled. And it started with something small and it got bigger and bigger. And every year I replayed that story in my head and I had a little more resentment towards him and a little more, a little more. And finally, like years later, I realized when we did, reconcile and rebuild, I look back and my biggest regret was the years that I missed, the years that the friction between us affected our children, those years of just toxicity in our home. And I had a small bit of resentment, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. And I would say, like, Shiloh, I'm glad that you said that, because it's real. That resentment, that when you hang on to something for too long, it's almost hard to readdress it, right? Like, it's so much water under the bridge, right? You need to go back and address that if that's what it takes to move forward, because 2025, you're just going to be stuck on that hamster wheel if you don't address it or if you don't forgive it. So do what you got to do. Reach out to somebody, get PDFs or books or whatever it takes, and do the work that needs to be done so that you're not living in that regret. And I speak to you from my heart when I say that.
I feel that. I feel tingles, and I think the women are going to experience the same thing. They're going to hear like, "What am I doing? I need
Mm-hmm.
to move forward and enjoy my life because life is precious and it's short."
I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shiloh. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.